Forget the pyramids of Egypt. Disregard the legions of Rome. If you were asked to name the most successful, most advanced civilization in history, your mind would default to the classics. The ones with written laws, massive armies, and metal coins. But what if the peak of ancient human achievement wasn't defined by military might, nor by written scrolls, but by something far more profound: social efficiency and the complete eradication of poverty? I'm talking about the Inca Empire, or as they called themselves, Tawantinsuyu, the realm of the four quarters. An empire that spanned the impossible, running the length of the Andes, but operated without the three things we deem essential for civilization: the wheel, the written word, and currency. And here is the controversial take. The Inca Empire was, arguably, the most successful and efficient civilization the world has ever seen. How can a society without money or a written language be more successful than Rome? We need to change our definition of success. Rome's success was conquest. Egypt's was permanence. The Inca's success was management. It was the miracle of running a massive, diverse, and geographically hostile empire with zero famine and zero internal economic collapse for nearly a century. Their success was not measured in gold. They had plenty, but they didn't use it as money. It was measured in the welfare of their people. Over the next 30 minutes, we will break down the 5 pillars of this radical claim. We're going to look at a road network that dwarfs Rome's, an accounting system based on knots that defies logic, an agricultural mastery that conquered the highest mountains, and a social welfare state that ensured no one starved. Let's begin with the backbone of this impossible empire: the road. A great empire requires a great infrastructure. The Romans built the Via Appia, a marvel of straight lines and durable paving. It stretched about 5,000 miles. Impressive. But what the Inca built, they called the Qhapaq Ñan, or the Royal Road. The Qhapaq Ñan was a logistical behemoth, a 25,000-mile network that's 5 times the length of the entire Roman road system. It connected arid coasts, dizzying mountain passes, and dense jungles. To put that into perspective, if you took all the major Roman roads and linked them up, the Inca road would still be twice as long. But the sheer distance isn't the miracle. The terrain is. The Romans had flat plains and gentle hills. The Inca had the Andes. Imagine carving a 2-meter-wide highway into the side of a sheer cliff face, 16,000 feet up, where oxygen is scarce and the temperature swings from scorching sun to freezing hail in an hour. The Inca engineers were masters of adaptation. They faced chasms and rushing rivers. Their solution? Suspension bridges. Using woven fibers of ichu grass, they created monumental rope bridges, some spanning over 150 feet, which were meticulously replaced every year as a communal effort. The weight-bearing capabilities of these structures were so advanced, they were still in use hundreds of years after the conquest. A Roman bridge was fixed and static. An Inca bridge was alive, a flexible response to a violent and unstable landscape. They were masters of drainage, preventing washouts in the rainy season, and masters of tunneling, carving through solid rock when a path around was impossible. The most staggering fact? They did this without the wheel. To transport the massive blocks of cut stone for their cities and their roads, they relied entirely on human and llama power, using logs as rollers. This forced them to develop an engineering style based on meticulous stone fitting and smaller, manageable sections, rather than massive, rapid construction. This network was not built for wheeled carriages. It was built for runners. These runners were the chasqui, stationed at rest houses called tambos every few miles. The chasqui relay system was the ancient world's fiber optic network. A message, or fresh fish from the coast, could travel over 150 miles a day through the mountains. This was a communication and logistics speed unmatched by any European kingdom of the era. The Inca maintained a real-time, centralized control over an empire the size of Western Europe, using nothing but human legs and lung power. The Qhapaq Ñan was not just a road, it was the nervous system of the empire. It wasn't built for commerce. Remember, they had no money. It was built for state management, to move military detachments, to dispatch official messengers, and crucially, to distribute state resources. This road system leads us directly to the next impossible achievement. How do you manage an economy that large without writing or money? In the 15th century, Europe was obsessed with gold, ledgers, and the printing press. Meanwhile, high in the Andes, the Inca operated a sophisticated command economy that solved two massive problems simultaneously: accounting and distribution. The miracle of the Quipu. The cornerstone of their economy was the Quipu. This was not a written language like cuneiform or hieroglyphs. It was a recording device, a complex system of colored cotton or wool strings with knots tied at different points. These knots recorded absolutely everything. They documented census data, inventory levels in the state warehouses, kolka, tax records, and even historical narratives. The colors of the strings, the way they were spun, and the type of knot, long, short, figure 8, all held mathematical and contextual meaning. Think about that. This was a civilization running a state budget, a national census, and a highly complex logistical operation across thousands of miles using only string and knots. The Quipu Camayokes, the official Quipu keepers, were specialized, highly trained bureaucrats who could read these knots. They represented the highest level of non-military power in the empire. Could Rome have managed their tax revenue across 3 continents without scrolls and wax tablets? Absolutely not. The Inca system was more concise, more portable, and fundamentally more decentralized, relying on a memorized key to unlock the data held in the strings. It was the ancient world's first truly advanced data storage and retrieval system. The economic engine, Mita and Ayni. The Inca economy was not built on money, it was built on labor. The entire system was regulated by 2 core non-monetary philosophies, Mita and Ayni. Mita, the labor tax. Instead of paying taxes with gold or silver, Inca citizens paid a labor tax called Mita. Every healthy male citizen was required to dedicate a certain amount of time each year to state projects. This meant building roads, Qhapaq Ñan, maintaining irrigation channels, working in state mines, or serving in the military. This centralized, organized labor pool allowed the Inca to complete massive public works projects at an astonishing rate. In return for this labor, the state guaranteed the welfare of every citizen. This is the radical part. Ayni, reciprocity. On a communal level, the society was governed by Ayni, the principle of reciprocity and mutual aid. If you helped your neighbor harvest their field, they were obligated to help you in turn. This wasn't a law, but a deep-seated cultural mandate. This local system ensured social harmony and prevented the development of a stratified, individualistic society. There was no commercial class in the Inca Empire, no merchant barons, no vast private fortunes. The state managed resource allocation entirely. Famine was not an individual failure, it was a state failure. And because the state took this responsibility seriously through the next pillar, agriculture, famine was almost non-existent. No other major civilization on Earth prioritized an economic system solely focused on public works and social security over individual wealth accumulation. The Inca were pure socialists, but with an autocratic efficiency that the modern world has never replicated. The Andes is a beautiful but merciless environment. Farming here is a desperate act. The soil is thin, the altitude starves crops of oxygen, and the extreme changes in climate can wipe out a harvest in hours. How could a civilization feed an estimated 10 million people in one of the most hostile agricultural zones on the planet? The answer? Terracing. The Inca conquered the mountain, not by fighting it, but by shaping it. Their agricultural terraces were not just simple steps, they were masterpieces of civil engineering. A. Soil composition. Each terrace was a miniature ecosystem with layers of gravel, sand, and rich topsoil painstakingly carried up the mountain. This layering provided excellent drainage, preventing waterlogging and root rot. B. Microclimates. The most brilliant aspect, seen clearly at sites like Moray, was the creation of artificial microclimates. The deep, bowl-shaped terraces at Moray have a temperature difference of up to 15 degrees Celsius between the top level and the bottom. This allowed Inca scientists to experiment and cultivate crops that normally could not grow at those altitudes, effectively creating an open-air agricultural laboratory. C. Biodiversity and food security. The Inca achieved unparalleled food security. They developed and cultivated over 4,000 varieties of potatoes, along with maize, quinoa, and coca. This massive genetic diversity acted as a natural insurance policy. If a blight or drought hit one variety, thousands of others would survive. Contrast this with modern agriculture, which often relies on monocultures, a recipe for disaster. And D, the Qhapaq, state storehouses. This food bounty was immediately fed back into the Mita system. Surplus food was not left to the individual farmer. It was stored in massive, dispersed Qhapaq, state storehouses. These were carefully designed, sometimes utilizing natural airflow from the mountains to act as cold storage. At the time of the Spanish arrival, chroniclers reported that some Qhapaq contained enough food to feed the entire empire for 3 to 7 years. No other ancient civilization maintained such a proactive, massive, and redundant food reserve. This is the ultimate measure of successful civilization, the prevention of human suffering. The fourth pillar is the most ethical and perhaps the most powerful argument for Inca success, a society that truly cared for its weaker members. In civilizations defined by individualism, like Rome, poverty was the price of freedom and the failure of the individual. In the Inca Empire, every person was a guaranteed asset of the state. A. Guaranteed security from birth to death. The Inca system was an absolute cradle-to-grave welfare state. No one, absolutely no one, was left to starve. The state held responsibility for providing for the elderly. Those too old to work were cared for by their Ayu, local communal group, with state assistance. The disabled, those with physical or mental disabilities, were exempt from mita and received provisions directly from the kolka. The widowed, women who lost their husbands, were also supported by the community and the state. Can you name another empire, ancient or modern, that before the 20th century operated with such a sweeping and forcible policy of zero poverty and guaranteed social safety net? B. Social cohesion and integration. The Inca were also brilliant at social engineering. When they conquered a new territory, they used a strategy of absorption, not total destruction. They often moved populations from different regions, mitimes, to maintain control and to integrate diverse cultural groups. They adopted the local deities into their pantheon, placing the Inca sun god, Inti, at the top, but allowing local gods to remain. This reduced internal dissent. The Inca language, Quechua, was imposed as the administrative language, but local languages were respected and preserved. Contrast this with the Roman approach, which often involved mass enslavement, cultural suppression, and brutal, highly visible punishments like crucifixion to enforce order. The Inca achieved stability through economic incentives and social guarantees, leading to less frequent and less violent internal resistance. They didn't rule purely through fear. They ruled through unquestionable competence and provision. So, if they were so perfect, why did the Inca Empire last only a century and collapse so quickly? The answer is not a flaw in their system, but a biological and political accident. A. The biological flaw. The ultimate cause of collapse was not internal weakness, but European disease, specifically smallpox, which traveled faster than the Chusky runners. It wiped out up to 90% of the population before Francisco Pizarro even landed. It killed the Emperor Qhapaq, triggering a devastating civil war between his sons, Huáscar and Atahualpa. B. The political flaw. Pizarro, arriving with a mere 168 men, did not conquer a stable empire. He arrived at the exact moment of its greatest internal fracture. By capturing and executing the victorious Emperor Atahualpa, Pizarro removed the absolute centralized head of the state. Because the entire Mita system was managed top-down, removing the Sapa Inca, the sole ruler, was like disconnecting the power supply. The machine, however perfect, couldn't run without its central processor. The final verdict. The true measure of a successful civilization isn't how long it lasts, but how well it serves the people, while it exists. Rome built a lasting legacy, but on the back of immense human suffering and chattel slavery. The Inca built a society where the worst fear of any ancient person, starvation, was practically eliminated. They conquered the most brutal terrain on Earth, managing a massive economy with knots instead of ledgers. They built an extensive network of roads without the wheel and solved complex mathematics without a written alphabet. The Inca Empire was not just a great civilization, it was an optimized system that achieved maximum social welfare with minimal technological overhead. It was a civilization that defined success not by the size of its treasury, but by the fullness of every citizen's stomach. They were, for a brief, shining century, the most successful empire in human history. If this deep dive into radical history has changed how you view the ancient world, remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. It's the easiest way to ensure you don't miss our next controversial historical claim. What do you think? Was the Inca Empire the peak of human ingenuity, or does Rome still hold the crown? Drop a comment below and join the debate. We read every one.